Alright, so here's a deck profile of my Worm Artifact deck. This is my main deck at the moment. I really like this deck. It's fun to play. It matches my preferred play style with lots of traps to try to react to what my opponent is doing. And it's also not like the same old, same old. It's something that's, you don't see that often. It's pretty cool. The worms themselves actually are pretty solid um, archetype. There's only a few of them that are any good. There's a lot of them that are terrible. But the ones that are pretty good make for a pretty good deck. And this has really good matchups across the board right now. You can probably tell just by looking at it that this deck is heavily anti-Nekroz. I've been playing against a lot of Nekroz, and with good reason. It's the best deck right now. But this deck, I've won more games than I've lost against both Nekroz and Qliphorts, and then everything else I've seen very little of. So those are the two decks that I'm pretty much preparing my deck for at the moment, and it's been very good against both of them. I've posted a few matches already. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get any matches recorded against meta decks. Every time I try to record, for some reason, I only get rogue decks over and over again. And then as soon as I stop recording, I get meta decks. It's really weird. But I'll try to get this against maybe like Nekroz so you can see how that matchup goes. So my main deck, I'm playing 9 worms. I would play 10, but I'm only playing 2 Carteros because I'm main decking Mistake. You really want to open up with one of these 3 worms because um, if you get your Nebula Meteorite, you need one of these to make it work. All of them are monsters that you set, so it gives you a set monster for this to activate. This doesn't actually set itself, but this is the best one. So when you summon this, you dump a Jaegen from your deck, and then the Jaegen summons itself in defense mode. When the Jaegen is flipped face up, you compulse one of your opponent's monsters. So that's extremely good against decks that use their extra deck. It's not quite as good against Nekroz or Qliphorts, but it still sets them back a lot. They lose a lot of momentum when you do that. And you're summoning the Jaegen for a +1 off of the Zex. So it's basically like a free monster, which is pretty sweet. It is a little weak to Dark Hole and Regeki, which are both seeing play now because of the Dijin lock. I think Karos by itself is actually a little bit better than Jaegen, but you end up dumping a lot of Jaegens, and you still want to draw into Jaegen every once in a while because sometimes they'll have like advantages, but you need the compulse. So Zex doesn't get you to your Jaegen, so you need to just draw into the Jaegen. So that does come up. And Carteros really sucks to draw at the same time as Mistake because you basically have to either wait a turn to use Mistake on your opponent, or you don't get Carteros' effect. So you have to choose one or the other in that situation. Luckily for this deck, the only card in the entire deck that searches is Carteros. So you have a lot of like pseudo searching. This like dumps to the grave, and this will summon a monster from your deck, and this will set a monster from your deck. So you're actually going through your deck a lot without actually searching, which is pretty cool. So you can get away with playing Mistake, and that's obviously good against Nekroz. Then I'm playing 1 King. You special summon this off of Nebula Meteorite. Drawing into King is terrible. It's basically a -1. Even if you tribute summon him, you can tribute 1 worm to tribute summon him, which is sometimes that's good. That does come up, but that's still a -1. So drawing Worm King is always bad. I'm actually a little tempted to just cut him. The reason I'm playing him is because it's a free 2700 beat stick, which is really good, but drawing him really hurts sometimes. So I think playing the Worm King is borderline, and you should definitely not play 2. That's pretty bad. And then to complement the worms, I'm playing artifacts. So the worms are kind of small. 9 monsters isn't really enough for a deck. You kind of need something else to beef it up. I didn't want to play anything that required a normal summon, so I decided to play the artifacts. The artifacts also are light, so that combos well because you can play honest because the worms are all light, If you were just playing the artifacts or you were just playing the worms, that's probably not enough lights for Honest. Both of them together makes Honest really live. Um, so you're playing one Moral Tech, two Scythe, one Lancia, and two Bagel Tech. Moral Tech is probably still the best one. It's really good against Qliphort and Nekroz. So those are the two main matchups, and Moral Tech is really good in both of them. Scythe is not very good against Nekroz. It's okay against Qliphort because it can stop them from pendulum summoning sometimes. And it's extremely good against Burning Abyss and a lot of rogue matchups. So you're kind of playing it mostly there for the Burning Abyss when you do go up against that, but it's pretty applicable in most matchups. I do side these out against Nekroz. And then Lancia is obviously for the Nekroz matchup. It's really nice that I can actually just main deck this for that matchup because in other matchups its effect is useless, but it's still an artifact monster that I can just put on the board with like Beagle Tech, and then I can just use it for like an Xseed summon. So um, it's not the best card to get in other matchups, but it's also not useless in other matchups. So I really like it against Nekroz. It has a lot of applications, so you can use this to stop Trish. You can use this to stop Valkyris from stopping your attacks. You can use this to stop the Nekroz Mirror from summoning, and you can also use it to stop them from searching for new ritual spells with the ones in Grave. That last one isn't really, that doesn't come up because um, you're basically just taking a -1 to slow them down for one turn, and usually you can't afford to do that. But the first three applications have all come up. Trish comes up the most often. You can leave yourself vulnerable to Trish plays if you have a Lancia, and then they'll usually go for it, and then you can stop them, and usually they're in a bad position then. Not a necessarily bad position, but not the most optimal position. And then otherwise, if you don't have a Lancia, you just play around Trish by not letting yourself have a hand. Um, that you can do that fairly well with this deck. Sometimes you end up with like a king in your hand, and that could be problematic for that goal. And then two Beagle Tech. This works really well with Ignition. It's good for getting out multiple monsters out on one turn, which is pretty good. I also like how the artifact monsters are fairly big main deck monsters, so that does help against the Nekroz matchup because Nekroz has lots of extra deck hate. And the 23 defense is actually pretty relevant because you can sit on this when they have a unicorn and they can't attack over it. Um, that came up a couple times, so that's it's a nice feature at least. So they're decent sized, and then Honest makes all my monsters bigger, which is great. Honest is also really good at going for game. Um, yeah, it's hard for your opponent to play around this. It's still one of the best traps right now. And then very small spell lineup. I'm playing Snatch Steel and Regeki for monster removal. They're both pretty good against Qliphort and Nekroz, and they're applicable in essentially every matchup. I don't really like Snatch Steel against Burning Abyss, so I'd side that out. I am not playing Soul Charge. So I was playing Soul Charge before, but it's actually rather subpar. So really the only things you can do with it is summon 2 monsters for 1 Xseed summon. You can summon 4 monsters for 2 Xseed summons. You can summon a Worm King, that's usually pretty solid if it happens to be in your grave. And that's really about it. There's not much, and it also, you can't even use your battle phase that turn. So Soul Charge is kind of in this deck, and it's quite bad against Nekroz because um, all of the Soul Charge plays basically involve going to the extra deck, which isn't even that good against Nekroz. And you also want to not be special summoning because of Vanity's Emptiness, and it's just also Soul Charge tends to sit in your hand if you have it, and that leaves you open to Trish. So I don't like Soul Charge as much in this deck. It's obviously still a great card. It's just not the best in this deck. Um, So yeah, that's another thing with this deck. There's no ways to reuse the monsters, so there is a limited amount of steam that the deck has before it runs out, and then you have to try to like beat your opponent before you run out of monsters, basically. Um, because if the game goes on for too long, that will happen. And I'm playing 2 MST and 3 Ignition. They're dead against Nekroz, but they're good against Qliphort. Also, you have to play the Ignition with artifacts to just set the artifacts off. I actually, I side out against Nekroz. I'll side out the MSTs, but I'll leave the Ignitions in because I need the Ignitions to pop my own monsters. And also, every once in a while, the Nekroz players will set cards, and you can hit them none if that happens. Um, there are good against most rogue decks, so lots of spell trap removal definitely helps against Qliphort. That's one of the main reasons that's a pretty good matchup, um, because a lot of the hate that I'm playing is more for Nekroz, and I'm kind of relying on having 5 MSTs in my main deck to go a long way in the Qliphort matchup, which it does. I'm playing 1 Book of Moon. Book of Moon's still one of the best traps. It's the best trap against Burning Abyss, which is probably the worst matchup for this deck. But luckily you don't see it as much anymore. And then Book of Moon has applications in basically every single matchup. You can use it to good effect against both Qliphort and Nekroz. Um, I sided out against like Shaddolls. I don't really like it against them, but um, I haven't played against Shaddolls in a while, like a week or two. Yeah, most people aren't playing the older decks anymore. The old good decks anymore, I should say. And then I'm playing 3 W Meteorite. This is basically the reason why worms are good. If you don't know what it does, it basically says you win the game. Um, so what it actually says is you change all face-down monsters in the field to face-up defense position. So at this point, you'll trigger either Zex or either Yagan or Carteros, depending on what you have set. So Carteros will get you a search here. So that's one card you get, or Yagan will bounce something. So we'll consider that a 1 card. So you're at neutral advantage right now because of this card has to go to the grave. So you're at neutral advantage. Then during your end phase, you flip all of your face-up light monsters into face-down defense position. Usually you have 2. Usually you have a Zex and a Yagan. So you flip those 2 face down, you draw 2. So now you're +2. If you have this one, then you're +1. And then the third part, still not done, you special summon a level 7 or higher light reptile type monster from your deck. That's king. So then you go +3 or +2 at this point. Then on your next turn, you can again reflip up Carteros. That puts you up to +3 if you did this play with Carteros. And if you did the play with Zex and Yagan, if you can get another bounce of Yagan, that would put you to +4. So this card generates a massive amount of card advantage, and it's really really good. It's also basically when you use it with Yagan, it's 3 copies of Compulse. So I'm actually not even playing Compulse right now because it's kind of against both Nekroz and Qliphorts, which are the 2 most common matchups. But um, having 3 copies of Compulse that are actually, instead of 1-for-1s, they're like +4s or +3s, that's pretty amazing. So this is probably the best card in the deck. The only other card that you could argue with would be, I guess, the Floodgates in certain matchups or Sanctum. Sanctum is still really, really good. So you use Sanctum, obviously, to summon Moral Tech, Scythe, or Lancia, depending on the match up and the situation. So basically this card says you can destroy 1 monster on the field, you can prevent your opponent from exit summoning this turn, or you can prevent your opponent from banishing this turn. The first 2 options, you get a +1 because you're summoning a monster with that effect. Third one, it's a neutral because you have to tribute the Lancia. But that's still, using this to get out Lancia to stop Trishula is pretty nice. Usually you can tell when your opponent's going to go for Trishula. So also you can get free bagel text. So if you like draw into any of these three, basically what you do is you just summon Bagel Tech with the Sanctum, and then you pop the monster and summon it with Bagel Tech. So you're just getting a free monster on the board, which is nice, definitely. Um, and then we're playing all the best floodgates, triple vanities. It's terrible against Qliphorts, but it's really good against basically everything else. It's bad against the Sendries also. But I've actually never played against the Sendries with this deck. Anyways, this card will let you win games against um, Nekroz. So if you have just a beat stick, so like a Zex or any of the artifacts except Scythe, or except Bageltech, you can just sit on them and then beat your opponent, and with vanities they can't do anything until they draw an out, like MST or Dark Hole, and that definitely wins games. It's really good. You can't do that with Bageltech or Cargos or Jagan because they're too small. You can actually just sit on Jagan in defense mode and Bageltech in defense mode with the vanities, and you can stall for time by doing that. Um, that sometimes lets you get out of tough situations. I'm playing 2 Mistake. I was playing 3, but I decided to play 3 Mind Crush instead because Mistake conflicts with Carteros and Mind Crush doesn't. I like both of these a lot right now. Mistake is extremely good against both Nekroz and Qliphorts, and honestly, like, you can just simply win the game by having Mistake against those two decks. They can't get their scout searches, they can't like be consistent. That's why Necros are good. They just search for everything. Um, so they can still make plays, but they won't be able to make the plays they want to make, and it really hurts them. This is also really good against the Teller Knights, and it has applications against essentially every single deck. Even like Burning Abyss will search with Skarm, and you can stop that. But I would side this out against Burning Abyss. And then 3 Mind Crush. Mind Crush is insane right now. It's extremely good against essentially everything. So against Necros, there's so many good plays with Mind Crush. So the main thing you can do is when they use Kaleidoscope, you call Necros Unicorn, and then usually they can't actually even summon anything if you hit their Unicorns. Sometimes they can, but it's not what they want to summon. Usually they want to be dumping the Herald to get the Unicorn out. So that's a huge play. The other main thing you can do against Necros is when you have game and they're using their Valkyrus in hand to keep themselves alive, you can just call Valkyrus and they have to ditch it to the grave, and then you can attack for game, and then they lose. And that's just really good against them. They don't play any real traps except for Valkyrus, basically. They're basically putting all of their eggs in that one basket, and you can OTK them because of that. So that definitely comes up. You can also Mind Crush like anything against that deck. Those are the two main applications though. And then against Qliphorts, it's obviously great. If you can get it first turn, you hit their Qliphort Scout if they search it with Summoner's Art. Even if you don't get that, you can still hit whatever they search with Scout and it sits them back. This is really good against Burning Abyss too, because you can hit their tour guides that they search with Skarm, and also if they try to special summon a Burning Abyss monster from their hand using its effect, you can call that monster and they have to discard it to the grave without getting its effect. So that's good for getting rid of Skarm, Sur, and Graf. And this is good against essentially every single deck. Almost every deck searches. So Mind Crush is really good right now. I cut basically all of my more traditional traps for this. The only traditional trap left is Bottomless, because Bottomless is pretty good against Necros and against Qliphorts. You can hit all of the ritual monsters except Clausulus with Bottomless, and if they summon 2 at a time, it's pretty good. It's one of the few traps that I think is still decent in that matchup. I don't really like Compulse or Warning against them. Warning, you can hit the Manju and the Senjus, and that's decent, but it's not really that good to warning their spells. You're basically just giving them free card advantage and free life point advantage because they're searching their spells for free. And then Bottomless is good against Qliphorts. It hits everything that they summon, and it's really good if they Pendulum Summon into it. That doesn't happen often though. So I'm adding this part right now onto the video after I already finished filming the previous part. I filmed the previous part of the video like 2 days ago, and since then I've decided I wanted to add a couple cards. Thunder King and Necro Valley. I'm actually considering main decking both of these cards, but I for sure want to side deck them. So I cut the defusions to put these in. So Thunder King, I wanted another level 4 beat stick that I could just summon, because especially against Necros, there's a lot of times where you're sitting on vanities, and if you have a beat stick, then that's all you need to win. So I just needed something that I could summon that happened to be good. It would be better if it was another Zex, but Thunder King fills the job pretty well as well. Um, it's a light monster, so that means it works well with the Honest. And also, its effect happens to be pretty solid at the moment. It's really good against Necros, except if you don't have traps, they can just summon a monster and attack over it. You can definitely hamper them by stopping them from searching, but it's not too hard for them to go over it. Likewise, this also hampers Qliphort's search ability, but they can easily attack over this as well. All they need is a scale or sacrifice to pump their monster up by 300, and then they're bigger than Thunder King. And then Thunder King is pretty solid across the board in other matchups. It's pretty solid, especially in the Satellar Knight matchup, which is still fairly relevant, especially compared to some of the other decks that are not seeing as much play. I put Satellar Knights probably as the third or fourth most played deck right now, kind of about the same as Burning Abyss in my experience. And then Necro Valley is just this amazing tech idea that I had the other day. So Necro Valley does absolutely nothing to my deck. I cut the Soul Charge, which is the only card that was affected by this before. I don't banish anything in my grave, and I have lots of effects that move cards in my graveyard, but they're all moving themselves. The artifacts all move themselves, and then the Yagin also moves itself. So that means Necro Valley does absolutely nothing to my deck. And in the Necros matchup, this card is really good because it stops them from using Trishula, it stops them from using Valkyrius, it stops them from searching for more ritual spells, because all three of those effects need to banish cards in the graveyard to work. So none of them work with Necro Valley up. They also can't use Unicorn because Unicorn moves cards other than itself out of the graveyard. And it basically makes both Cycle and Mirror just normal ritual spells. Because Cycle, you cannot banish cards in your graveyard for it. You can still tribute from your hand or field. So it's just basically a normal one. And Cycle, you cannot special summon from the graveyard because of Necro Valley. So you would have to just, again, special summon a monster from your hand. So it just turns those two into normal ritual spells, which definitely hurts. So Necro Valley puts in a lot of work in that matchup. The main problem with Necro Valley is that it's absolutely useless in the Qliphort matchup, which would be the main reason why I would not want to main deck it. There's literally no cards that they play that this does anything to, so it would just be a blank. However, it is pretty good against most other matchups. It's really good against the Teller Knights because they can't use Altair, Call the Haunted, or Oasis of Dragon Souls. Against Burning Abyss, they can't use Dante or Sur. And I played against Infernoids recently, and this basically says you cannot play. Because they can't summon themselves without banishing cards in the graveyard. The only option is to banish cards from their hand, to summon other monsters from their hand. Actually, they can summon themselves from the grave, so you can actually summon from the grave by banishing stuff in your hand. That's the only thing they can do with Necro Valley out. But that was a really easy win with Necro Valley. So I definitely am going to be side decking this card. I am considering main decking it. I think it depends on how popular Qliphort is, because that's really the only matchup where it's useless. And then I did make one other change to the extra deck. Diamond Crab King came out in the TCG, and I was able to pick up a copy from uh, local Barnes and Noble. This is a promo in the Zexal Volume 6. So if you guys don't have this, you should try to get this because it's really good. Um, this isn't out to towers, by the way, because it changes its attack to 3,000. So that means killer's effect to reduce it by 500 doesn't do anything. So you can just crash this into towers. Besides that, this is the best beat stick that's available to rank 4, which is something that the rank was pretty much just was totally missing that. The main downside, in my opinion, is this cannot get over Unicore. So that's not too big of an issue though, because if you really need to, you can just go into Ragnar Zero to attack over the Unicore. Actually, this deck I should be able to just summon Omega also, besides the Ragnar Zero. They both have 2400 attack. So, to make room for this, I had to cut something. So I decided to cut Diamond, because I have not been playing against as much Burning Abyss, Satellar Knights, and Shaddolls as I used to. And those are the only matchups where I could potentially summon that. And I also cut the Mind Control, because the best matchup for the Mind Control was Satellar Knights to steal their Xseed and summon a Diamond. Alright, now I'll go back to my previous recording, and I'll go through the rest of my side deck. Side deck. So, I am citing the third mistake. I bring this in against a lot of matchups, really. Nekroz especially. I'm playing Compulsion Warning. Against most rogue decks, I'll put these in. This is really good against Burning Abyss and Shaddolls if you go up against those. I'll put this in against Qliphorts and most things that aren't Necros. MST, if I need more Spell Trap hate, I can play 6 copies. Triple Max C. I used to main deck Max C, but Max C is pretty much dead against Qliphorts. I don't want it in that matchup. And then against Necros, it's not bad, but it's also not that great. It's just a 1-for-1 because they'll just stop. The only time they don't stop when you Max C is when they're in a really bad position and they have to force through a play, but that's not typical. Also, this puts a monster, or puts a card in your grave on your first turn so you can get Trishulin. So, yeah, I don't really like Max C in the main deck. It's still decent against Necros, and it's still amazing against Burning Abyss. The main reason I'm citing 3 is because I want 3 whenever I play against Burning Abyss. And it's definitely nice to have. And then 1 Mind Control for any deck that plays level 4s. Essentially, you can just Mind Control and then make an Xseed. I especially like this against Satellar Knights. You can just steal their Xseed monsters and then make Diamond. That's pretty funny. So yeah, this goes in against Qliphorts too. Then I'm playing 2 Defusions for Shaddolls and Heroes. It's unfortunate that you can't use this against Ritual Beasts, even though they're fusions, because they just dodge it. And then, I actually, if I cut anything, it would probably be this, because I haven't played against those 2 matchups as much. But it's really good against those decks. And then 2 Fairy Winds for Qliphorts. I bring these in, obviously siding out my continuous traps. I still leave in the mistakes because it's pretty good in that matchup. But Fairy Wind wins games against Qliphorts. It's a great card against them. Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, I don't play any Darks. It only hurts my extra deck. And then this is obviously great against anything that's dark, which is Burning Abyss and Shaddolls primarily. And then the second Lancia for when I play against Necros or Infernites, anything that wants to banish. You'd probably side this in against Ritual Beasts. But usually against Necros, you'll side out the 2 sites and you'll bring in the Lancia. You want at least 5 artifacts in your deck. If you're gonna play less than 5, so you can side out 3 of them, like the Lancia, the 2 big attacks, and then 3 ignitions. That's an option. So then you're just playing the Sanctums and 3 monsters. but I prefer 5 to 6 artifacts plus the 3 ignitions. Those are the two ways you can go, really, with the engine. So the extra deck, you can play lots of really good cards. You get all the best rank 4s. So you got a Fistdweller, Castel, Exciton, Gaga Cowboy, King of the Feral Imps. So this is obviously something that most decks don't play, but this is probably the most used rank 4 in the deck. You usually just search for a Zex. And it's basically a way of just uh, like refilling your plays. So like you'll like flip summon a Kardos, get like a Yagan, and then just summon it, and then you go into the King of the Feral Imps, search for Zex. So then you have a card in your hand for after the destroy King of the Feral Imps, and you have a monster on board. So it's pretty nice. Then you're playing Ragnar Zero, 101, Heartland Draco, and that's it for the generic rank 4s. And you can play lights because all the ones are light. So Omega, and then Tsukiyomi. Tsukiyomi comes up the second most probably. So you set a lot obviously with this deck, and this is like just draw one. It's also ditch your worst card for a new card. It's really good if you can summon it. I go into Tsukiyomi a lot. It's good for ditching dead kings when you draw them. And then rank 5s, the artifacts are also light, so playing double Pleiades. I actually did need 2 Pleiades once, so I've got 2 in there. And then I've got Bulbasaurus, and Diamond is a rank 5. I can actually summon Diamond using 3 level 5 light monsters, because the artifacts qualify. I have not done that, but it's possible. I can also summon Diamond through stealing my opponent's um, monster, the Trevera or Deltaros, and putting this on top of it. I'm actually considering cutting Diamond though, because it's really only good against Burning Abyss, Shaddolls, and Satellar Knights. Because I can steal the Satellar Knights, and this is good to make using 3 monsters against Burning Abyss and Shaddolls. I'm not going to use it against any other matchup really besides those 3, and they're not as common as they used to be, so I'm considering cutting Diamond just because of that. And then I'm playing Gaia Dragon that put on top of the Bulbasaurus. You can also put on top of these things. Usually you put on top of Bulbasaurus though. So that was my Worm Artifact deck. Uh, it's actually extremely good right now. The format's very friendly for it, and with all the hate I'm running for Nekroz, you do stand a good chance every time you play against them. And I enjoy the deck. Hopefully you enjoyed the deck profile. If you did, be sure to check out some other stuff.